Item 5 is open session, and we normally return to open session and announce actions taken, and there's no reportable action for tonight. Next, we'll move on to item 6, which is town recognition of town clerk, administrative manager Linda Lopez upon her retirement.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd just like to start it off and then hand this over to you. But it is my pleasure to start off our recognition of Town Clerk Administrative Manager Linda Lopez. She is retiring after 17 years of service to the town of Ross. So let's just start off with some applause. So that is just incredible. Linda was promoted several times over these years, and she has been the town clerk administrative manager for the past 10 years. Because that is just amazing. She has been an extremely valuable and dedicated employee, really the hub of our organization. I know there are going to be dozens of times in the coming year or years, and we're going to scratch our heads and we're going to say, oh my goodness, how did Linda get this done? How did Linda do this? So I recognize the breadth of the functions and the care she has taken over the years and the things that she does for us and for the council and for the community. We're just very grateful for the work that she has done, and thank her for all of those significant contributions to the town, and wish her the very best in her much deserved retirement. So congratulations, Linda. And I'm going to hand it over to our Mayor Pro Tem Breckus to make a presentation, and if the council had any other words they'd like to say.
Thank you. I want to congratulate you on your retirement, and I just want you to know we're doing the bare minimum that we can do here, because you've expressed that you didn't want a whole lot of fanfare, but the fact is so many residents have come up and said, what are we doing for her? Because they recognize how much you've done for everybody in the town over the years. So I just want to say it's like incredible how many hats you wear and how you have kept us doing our job and following after us for so long. I just really appreciate all the support you've given me and the council generally. So always calm, always competent, always gets it done. And we just were really lucky to have you as a long-term employee. So thank you so much. And if anybody has anything else to add, and then I've got a great proclamation to read.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, thank you so much for keeping everything running so smoothly, for reminding us in a nice way, particularly me, that it was time to do this and time to do that. And you will be very much missed, but we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Thank you again.
So Linda, to me, you're kind of the face of the town of Ross, because you're the first person that people see when they come in to do town business. And I remember before I was on the council coming in many times to figure stuff out, and you were always so helpful. And when I was mayor, my standard was, when I would do my monthly mayor's report, if you had no comments, I had done a great job. So I really appreciate your attention to detail and keeping us going, everyone going in the right direction, and you will be truly missed. Thank you.
And I'd like to say some words. I'm sorry I can't address you in person, Linda, but I mean, I remember walking in the very first day, and you were so capable and so competent, and very graciously showed me how to use the iPad, which I was clueless about. So I really appreciated all of your tips. I think that Julie mentioned you're the face of the town. You're also the face of the morning after. And I honestly think that if you wanted to sell subscriptions, I think most town members would subscribe to the morning after if you could keep writing it. So consider that as a hobby during retirement. But we will truly miss you, and thank you for all of your help.
And with that, I have a proclamation to read. Recognizing Linda Lopez. Okay. Whereas Linda Lopez performed the office of Administrative Manager, Town Clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government from November 1, 2005 to December 20, 2022. And whereas Linda Lopez attended approximately 200 council meetings, overseeing the creation of approximately 3,000 agenda reports, and providing the professional link between the citizens of the town of Ross, the local governing bodies and agencies of government at other levels. And whereas Linda Lopez managed elections in the town of Ross for 17 years, being ever mindful of her neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas Linda Lopez processed approximately 400 payroll cycles, managed accounts payable, and oversaw new hire and other human resource processes. And whereas it is more appropriate that we recognize the significant accomplishments of Linda Lopez during her tenure with the town of Ross. Now, therefore, on behalf of the town council and the town of Ross, I do hereby recognize the positive impacts made by Administrative Manager, Town Clerk Linda Lopez, and wish her a wonderful retirement after serving the residents of the town of Ross for the past 17 years. And this has been signed by Mayor Beach Cool. And if you wouldn't mind, it is my honor to
Thank you all very much. I'm very moved by this. It's been a great ride, and I've enjoyed and learned a great deal working here. The residents of Ross and the staff, the great staff we have, and I'll miss everybody. You're making me cry now, but I really appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item number 7. Introduction and welcome to new employee Cindy Martell, Town Clerk Administrative Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. It's my pleasure to introduce formally, officially this time, Cindy Martell as the town's new Town Clerk Administrative Manager. Cindy joined the Town of Ross team on November 28th and is currently training with Linda Lopez, and she's going to be ready to take over on December 21st. Prior to joining the town, Cindy was the district clerk office manager for the Tamalpais Community Services District, that's in the area near Mill Valley, for 6 years. Previously, she worked in the private sector in banking, high-tech, credit, and biotech. She is a longtime Marin County resident and spends much of her time enjoying the beautiful outdoors, so we know she will be very comfortable in our beautiful Ross community. Welcome to the town, Cindy.
The next item I'm going to call are changes to the agenda, and I wanted to move to change or propose to change item 18 and 19 and move them between 15 and 16 so that those residents can go home and go to bed before the housing element, should they wish to skip the housing element, which is a long item. So that's what we'll do. Next is item number 8. That's open time for public expression, and the speaker should not be speaking on items that are actually on the agenda. So please, if you're here for agenda items, save your comments for that time, and you're limited to 3 minutes per speaker for an item not on the agenda. Is there anyone that wishes to be heard? Yes. And if you would, please state your name.
Remember my name now. Hi, my name's Diane Redden. I've been in town for a few years, and I'm here to personally say thank you to Linda. So I just wanted, as somebody that she's been so nice to, has helped as I've gotten some of her calendars with her wonderful artwork on it, and that's why I'm here, and also to say Ann Hickey expresses it. So, thank you. Oh, here.
Thank you. The next item is the mayor's report. We're going to skip that for the morning after because Beach isn't here. And I'll move then to item number 10, council committee and liaison reports. Are there any reports?
Yes, I wanted to mention that the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority annual report was put in each council member's box, and it's also posted on the town's website. It's full of great information about what the MWPA has accomplished in year 2. And we are having our first in-person board meeting a week from tonight. So we're an agency that started up in May of 2020. We're finally going to meet in person. So it's very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports? Okay, we're going to move on to item number 11, which is staff and community reports. Town manager report.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. I just have a couple of quick updates for you this evening. The Ross Common Field will begin its annual reseeding and maintenance closure beginning in the December 20th, 21st timeframe. And that closure continues until baseball season starts in the beginning of March. You may recall that last year, the Public Works Department kept part of the field open at the request of residents and Ross School. This year, they're going to try it again. However, the area that will be left open is going to be the area that's kind of closest to the street, to the post office side of the common, because the part of the field that is closest to the blacktop and the school is the part of the field that requires the most attention and time to heal. So we will make sure we are communicating that with the school, and we've already coordinated that with Ross Recreation Programming. Staff is continuing to work to install the drinking fountain on Ross Common. Both the porta potty enclosures are now complete, like really complete. And big thanks to the Ross Property Owners Association for taking on that additional work to get it all done. Although rain is forecasted to continue through Saturday and to be heavy at times, staff does not expect the creek to flood. Nonetheless, staff will be monitoring the creek and streets for flooding and downed trees, and will certainly call in for reinforcement as needed to respond. Public Works has been clearing out storm drains and town maintained ditches as usual to prepare for the rainy season. We ask residents to continue to keep their gutters and the water courses that may run through their properties clear of debris. PG&E staff has confirmed that they will give a presentation to the Town Council at your January 12th meeting regarding their tree maintenance and removal program and how they notice the public when they're closing streets or for planned power gas outages. So something to look forward to. Town Hall will be closed for the holidays the week beginning Monday, December 26th and ending December 30th. On Thursday, however, of that week, December 29th, our building inspector will be performing building inspections. So people aren't going to have to wait a whole week. So they will be able to get inspections done on that day. And of course, public safety is always open for business. Town Hall will reopen for business on Monday, January 2nd. Even though it is a holiday, we will be here working. We're going to be taking the holiday the previous week. So as to reduce the impact to our customers. And finally, it is with regret that I announce that our fabulous recreation manager, Gretchen Kastitz, is leaving the town around the beginning of the new year. She has worked for the town for 6 years, starting as a recreation clerk, promoted to administrative assistant, and then to rec manager. We are especially grateful for her leadership of the department through the COVID pandemic. I asked Gretchen what she's particularly proud of during her time here, And she said that it's her work as a liaison between the age-friendly task force and the town, and also to have brought back recreation programming back up to its pre-pandemic levels. She's very much enjoyed working with the community, with building an even better relationship with Ross School, working with the town council, especially lately, and staff during her tenure here with the town of Ross. We're going to miss her a lot, but we do wish her the very best in all of her future endeavors. So thank you, and if we could do one round of applause for Gretchen, please. So, and with that, I just wish everybody a safe and healthy holiday season. Thanks for the opportunity to report.
Thank you. And Gretchen, thank you. Next item is Ross Property Owners Association. Is there somebody here to give a report?
Hi.
Erica Bell.
Hi.
Sorry, can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Hi, my name's Erica Bell. I'm the co-president of the Ross Auxiliary and on the board of the RPOA. It's been a pretty exciting month for the RPOA. I'm sure some of you have noticed the lovely decorations around town, but a huge thank you goes out to the town council for working with us this year and supporting the decorations. We have beautiful lights in the commons, some lovely wreaths around the post office, you'll notice. And also a big thank you to Anthony for helping us get those decorations together this year. Our big event was the Winterfest event on the Commons. Again, thank you for everyone that helped us make that happen this year. Unfortunately, the weather did not participate, so we had to cancel the party portion of the event. We were going to have food trucks and carolers. However, the ice skating rink still happened on the blacktop at the Ross School on Saturday. So for those of you who had a chance to swing by, it was a huge success despite the rain. We had over 300 people buy tickets for the ice skating rink. It sold out in less than a day. I would say over 75% of our ticket holders actually showed up to skate in the rain. The kids had a ball. We had Christmas music, Santa came, we were serving hot chocolate. The police came by and set up a beautiful tent on the blacktop. So, you know, it was cold, it was raining, but we made the best of it. And it's been quite the winter wonderland here in Ross. So again, thank you all so much for helping us make this happen. We hope we can continue to do all these special events for years to come. Just to note a couple other things the RPOA is working on. You'll start to notice at the post office, a beautiful welcome to Ross brochure. Any new resident will receive that welcome to Ross kit in their mailbox, in their PO box. And anyone that's just kind of interested in taking a look, the brochure will be on display in the post office shortly. So you'll see that. And we are also working on a really special story walk or tour with the Historical Society to kind of help promote just fun facts and stories about our unique town. So more to come on that. And our next, the next RPOA specific event will be the Live on the Common. They're shooting for May 12th. So it'll be a spring event. And the Ross Auxiliary will be having another spring fling Easter hunt on the Common this year, hopefully as well in the spring. So really looking forward to that. And again, thank you all so much for supporting us with all of these, you know, really special holiday events.
Thank you so much. The next item is the consent agenda. Are there any members from the public or council members who wish to pull off an item on the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, on tonight's consent. Oh. Thank you. On tonight's consent agenda, there is an item amending the town manager's employment agreement that requires a brief oral report before adoption by consent pursuant to Government Code Section. Yes, we haven't gotten there. Yeah. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, subsection C, subsection 3, the amendment will increase the town manager's annual salary by the amounts reflected in the staff report. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember McMillan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kirscher.
Aye.
Councilmember Burkus.
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins.
Aye.
All right, the vote passes unanimously.
The next item on our agenda is Planning Projects Part 1. And the next item is 13A, which is 71 Shady Lane, demolition and design review and town council consideration of resolution number 2282. And the planning director will be describing the project.
Thank you. Good evening. As Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, the project is at 71 Shady Lane. It's a demolition design review. And the project consists of demolition of an existing guest house and construction of a new deck, a new swimming pool, landscape and hardscape improvements. The landscaping includes just sort of filling in plants where the team seems feasible, as well as the hardscape includes a new deck, a new trellis, and a pool, as I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. And next I'm going to turn it to the project applicant to see if they would like to give a presentation. I wanted also to let you know the project applicant would have 15 minutes to speak. You don't need to take all of that time. You also may save time for response to public comment. So would the project applicant like to give a presentation?
They are on Zoom, so if you could check.
And if you're on Zoom, you would want to raise your hand so that we know that you want to give the presentation.
It's Brad Egsty, Steven Sutro, who I think is on Zoom, and the owner, Eric Spally. I'm sorry if I'm saying your last name incorrectly. There's Brad.
Hi, thanks for hearing our project tonight. I'm the landscape architect for 71 Shady Lane. And I just wanted to express that we've worked diligently on this project with staff and have done quite a lot of studies with FEMA flood zone, and our project is conforming to all setbacks, no variances. And, you know, I'm mostly here to answer any questions. I just also wanted to stress that we did receive unanimous approval from ADR. And that's about it. I don't want to take too much time on the consent item here tonight, but I am here to answer any questions.
Thank you. So next, do any council members have questions for the applicant? Okay, now I will open the public hearing. And if anybody wishes to speak, we ask that you go and speak into the microphone. You're limited to 3 minutes, and I will press this to start the timer. So if you want to follow where you are. And if you would please state your name, that would be great.
Yeah, hello. I'm Wendell Nicholas. We're the neighbors of the Spaleys. to the south. And you know, I sent a letter to each of the council members relative to the project, and I think it pretty specifically sets out our objections to the project and the ADU Ross policy. But I'd like to make a few additional comments, and I'll read them if you don't mind. The pool deck, outdoor kitchen, and ADU are elevated 2.5 feet above ground level. This is a great concern to us. This will significantly exacerbate the noise problem and light problem, you know, and adversely impact our quiet enjoyment of the property. It seems the deck and pool are raised above ground level for, you know, almost purely aesthetic flow reasons. Apparently, the pool and deck were originally planned at ground level, which would allow a much enhanced flood water bypass. The current planned deck would allow limited flood water flow, but the elevated pool and the ADU block much of the existing overall bypass. If the siting of the project remains as is, placing the pool and deck and outdoor kitchen at ground level would improve the flood bypass and reduce our noise and light problem. From planning, we recently received a fresh, detailed set of plans that accompanied the no-rise flood report from Stetson Engineering. These plans show a large 12 by 30 overhead trellis from the roof of the ADU extending west over the deck toward the pool. The trellis was not clearly shown on any of the previous plans we received. The trellis would be 15 feet above ground level and will significantly add to the ADU mass overhanging our property. The trellis would seem to be almost an adjunct to the 800 square foot ADU. Question is whether this very significant overhang and trellis increases the usable ADU square feet above 800 square feet, thereby requiring the ADU to obtain council approval. Finally, according to planning, Stetson justifies a significantly reduced flood bypass around the south side of the project because the ADU is located in the shadow of the main house. And the
Just to let
ADU
you
would
know,
therefore not have an
It's
effect
been
on
3
water
minutes.
level.
It's been 3 minutes. If you would please just wrap up.
Say?
It's been 3 minutes, so if you would please wrap up.
Yeah, I will, I am. Stetson is a respected, firm. Past floods, however, from our experience, a significant amount of the flood water has gone around the south side of the house and onto Shady Lane. It's hard to believe that the blockage that will exist with the ADU will not significantly affect level or flow rate somewhere else in the floodplain.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the public that wishes to speak?
There are no raised hands.
Now I will close. Well, I did actually say that the applicant can respond to public comment, so I'm going to see if the applicant wanted to respond. And you don't have to, I'm just giving you that option.
Yeah, I don't,
Boutro, you may speak.
I just wanted to say that we're here to answer questions. We think that the project conforms in all ways, and but we're here to answer questions. The trellis is part of the usable terrace and pool area, and is not discreetly part of the ADU, but rather as part of the plan to enjoy the buildable area of the lot relative to kind of outdoor use that is allowed in the buildable area. But anyway, both Brad and I are here to answer questions.
Are there any questions of the applicant?
Just a quick question. Did ADR look at the trellis?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Do any council members have comments on the project or want to make a motion on the project?
She's recused.
I will make a motion to approve resolution number 2282.
Second.
Councilmember McMillan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher.
Aye.
Councilmember Breckus.
Aye.
All right, with a vote of 3, the motion passes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 13B 118 Winding Way, accessory dwelling unit and town council consideration of resolution number 2283. And do we have a staff report?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The applicant is requesting approval for an accessory dwelling unit to construct a 788 square foot ADU. Due to the natural grade, ADU is over 16 foot high, therefore it requires an ADU acceptance permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any of the council members have questions of staff? Would the project applicant like to give a presentation? And if you do, you have 15 minutes. You do not have to give a presentation. And you can also reserve time to respond to public comment. Is the applicant,
Ron Sutton, Sutton Suzuki Architects. I don't need to make a presentation. If you have questions, I can try to answer them.
Thank you. And do any members of council have a question? Okay. Then why don't we see if members of the public have any comment?
There's no raised hands. There's no raised hands.
Okay, thank you. So did you want to say anything further as part of your 15 minutes, or you're fine? Okay, thank you. So we'll close the public hearing. Would any member of the council have comments on the project or want to make a motion for the project?
I'll move to approve the project.
Councilmember McMillan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher.
Aye.
Councilmember Breckus.
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins.
Aye.
Thank you. With the vote of 4, the motion passes.
Thank you. The next item is administrative agenda, on the administrative agenda. It's a public hearing, town council consideration of adoption of resolution number 2284, establishing Marin sanitary service rates for 2023. And Town Manager Johnson, do you have a report?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Breckus, thank you. So the action before you this evening is to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution establishing maximum rates for Marin sanitary service for refuse and recyclable material collection and disposal services to be effective January 1st, 2023. Trash recycling and organics collection and disposal services are provided to the town of Ross pursuant to a franchise agreement between the town and the Marin Sanitary Service Company, which outlines that franchise agreement outlines the services provided as well as a methodology that's to be followed to set the customer rates every year. The jurisdictions in Marin that have similar agreements with Marin Sanitary work together informally as a Marin franchisors group. We share information and to reduce costs. The group meets several times a year to oversee the company's operations, and we work together to conduct a single annual rate review analysis rather than each jurisdiction having to conduct and pay for a separate review. Marin Sanitary submitted their 2023 rate application using the agreed upon methodology that's in the franchise agreement that assisted in stabilizing rate changes year to year. Then the franchisors group hired R3 Consulting Group to review the Marin Sanitary's rate request. R3 found that the rate requests of 6.28% for Ross, Town of Ross rates to be appropriate under this methodology that is in the franchise agreement. The two primary drivers of the rate increase are consumer price index increases in compensation to Marin Sanitary for its collection operations. That's accounting for 2.8% of that overall 6.28% increase. And rate revenue reconciliation, which is an account that balances amounts paid by the ratepayers against the annual revenue owed for operations. So that's comprising 2.33% of the overall rate increase to the Town of Ross. So put a little more simply, is 1/2 of the overall rate increase is for normal increases in compensation to Marin Sanitary for their collection operations and profit. And that's all outlined in the franchise agreement. Approximately 1/3 of the overall rate increase is due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, which reduced the amounts of ratepayer revenues to the company. However, even though revenues were reduced, Marin Sanitary continued to employ all the employees during the pandemic and did not see any reduced costs for their operation. So their costs remained the same or actually went up in some cases, but their revenues were reduced. So the 6.28% rate adjustment will result in an increase of $2.73 per month for a residential 32-gallon cart, with a monthly cost totaling $46.16. Recycling is included in that rate in all accounts, and customers can reduce their regular landfill container, your trash container size, and that will result in lower rates. So if you divert more into your recycling bins and into your organics bin, that will you can reduce the size of your trash cart, which will result in a lower rate. The consultants, R3, conducted a survey of Marin County refuse haulers as part of their rate review. Using this comparison, the Ross proposed rate is lower than the Marin County average. As in previous years, it is recommended that the rate adjustment be applied across the board to all residential, multifamily, and commercial service accounts in the town. Actual rates for all the services are provided as an attachment to the resolution number 2284, which is before you tonight for adoption. And so that's included in your packet, and the rate sheet is attached. Garth Schultz of R3 Consulting is participating via Zoom tonight, in case the council has some technical questions that I might not be able to answer. And Patty Garbarino, representing Marin Sanitary, is also available on Zoom along with their staff team, Justin Wilcox, if the council or members of the community have questions.
Thank you very much. Do any members of the council have any questions? Okay. So this is a public hearing, so we will then open it up to the public. Do any members of the public wish to be heard on this item?
Raised.
And seeing none? Yes. I'm going to turn it over to Patty Garbarino.
Oh, thank you, everyone. I will obviously be brief. we want to let you know how much we appreciate the ability to be able to serve you and bring you this kind of service that we're proud of and that we hope you are as well and meets all of your needs. We could go into depth, and I should mention I am here with my colleagues, our GM, Justin Wilcox, our CFO, Jason Raleigh, and our legislative analyst, Ruben Hernandez, to answer any of your questions. We're prepared to address issues of 1383, the SB 1383 that bans organics from the landfill in order to reduce greenhouse gas effects. All our alternative fuel pathway for our fleet to do the same. We recently ratified our Teamster contract and are very happy. So are the drivers that serve all of you. It was a very fair contract, and what we try to do is achieve something that's just north of the average in the area that we serve in order to keep good people. We had a wonderful Customer Appreciation Day on September 24th that brought in several hundred people for tours and compost giveaway, and that was a wonderful, bright day. And I would encourage everyone to come and take tours to be able to see our facility upgrades, specifically our food waste to energy program and our new debagger, our new Tiger debagger that helps to purify the material and get it ready for CMSA's use to make energy. And soon to be installed our optical sort system. And again, in order to cut down on contamination, making our secondary materials more marketable and able to get back into a second life. And with that, we're happy, of course, to answer any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Patty. And I've done 4 tours over there, so I don't think I'm I don't think I'm due yet. But
you could.
Anybody have any questions of Patty or of her team? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. Members of the public, I think we already opened it and closed it. So with that, do we have a motion from council?
Yeah, I will move to adopt resolution number 2284.
Second.
Councilmember McMillan,
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher,
Aye.
Councilmember Breckus,
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins.
Aye.
Thank you. With a vote of 4, the motion passes.
The next item on our agenda is item 15, Town Council discussion action regarding the potential addition of pickleball courts to the Ross-Town Tennis Platform Tennis Facility, and Town Council consideration to appropriate funding in the amount of $10,000 from the Facility and Equipment Fund to complete the work. Do we have a report?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Breckus and Council. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I am Gretchen Kastetz, the Recreation Manager, and Richard Simonich is here, the Public Works Director and Town Engineer, to give a report and answer any questions you may have. So the recommendation to begin with for Town Council is to direct staff to implement a trial pickleball program by adding 4 pickleball court lines to 1 tennis court to make it a multi-use facility. Additionally, it is recommended that the Town Council appropriate funding in the amount of $10,000 from the Facility and Equipment Fund to complete the work. A little background. So at the November 10th, 2022 meeting, town staff, Richard and myself, presented options for introducing pickleball to the existing tennis and platform tennis facility as an additional recreational activity. Town Council determined that they would like to have more input from the Ross residents for this potential addition. So what we did, we sent snail mail letters to all the current key holders, and then also mail letters, notices with the help of Linda Lopez and Donna to everybody that lived within 500 feet of the facility. In addition to that, we sent out an email blast to everybody that's on the town email list, and the paper notices and the email all included a link to a survey that I put together that asked questions about their preferences for pickleball or lack thereof. So we were lucky enough to get 165 responses to the survey, which I thought was a pretty good turnout. So as you can see here, one of the questions I asked was just simply, are you interested in having pickleball courts added to the facility? We had a response of almost 71% of the folks that responded answered yes, 20% answered no, and then about 9% answered other. In those other, the 10%, most of the people were indifferent, was their response in that other category. So the 4 options that we then asked about, would they like to have it on the platform tennis court, the 4 courts added to 1 court, no pickleball lines added, or other. And as you can see here, about almost 45% of the folks answered that they would like to see the 4 pickleball courts added to 1 tennis court. So that was what informed this town staff decision. So as you can see, there was a strong support from Ross residents to add the pickleball courts to 1 tennis court. And one important note is that we did receive feedback from multiple residents that the surface on the platform court is not compatible with pickleball, which is what eliminated it as an option for us. So the idea would be that this is implemented on a trial basis and will allow time for the town staff to evaluate the program for participation, compatibility, and other factors. The fiscal impacts are going to be that the estimated cost is that we got from somebody that does this as a quote is approximately $10,000. So this will include the 4 pickleball courts painted onto the tennis courts. The lines will obviously be in a different color than the tennis court line, so you can clearly see which is which, and 4 rolling nets. So the adopted fiscal year ending 23 budget does not currently include funding for this addition of pickleball. So if town council does direct staff to implement this plan, there will need to be a $10,000 appropriated from the facilities and equipment fund to cover the associated costs. And that's our presentation, and thank you so much for hearing that. And we're here for any questions.
Thank you. Does any member of the council have a question?
Just a quick question, Gretchen. When you say trial, what are you thinking? How long?
I think, Rich, me?
I would think the trial would be like a full season, a summer, spring, summer, fall, to see how it goes. If there's no backlash.
Excuse me, and that's a really great question, Councilmember McMillan. And I'm curious, when do you think the courts are scheduled next to be resurfaced?
Courts have a 15-year life on the resurfacing that we did about a year ago, so it's quite a ways.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking maybe we could do it in conjunction with that, but that would be a long trial period.
So you're envisioning like next fall, have a check-in to see how this is going?
I think that would be a good idea, yeah, next fall.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question?
I have a question. So the proposal is to paint pickleball lines on the tennis courts, leaving the tennis lines as well.
That's correct.
What if the decision is made to undo the pickleball lines? Is that doable? I mean, how would we do that without resurfacing or repainting the whole surface?
No, and that's a good question. So the paint colors that we chose when we resurfaced back in 2019 are they're standard colors that you know, come back and repaint over the pickleball lines with these standard colors. That would pretty much revert it back to its original at a nominal fee.
And then one other sort of a question I get, well, it is a question, but I'll preface it by saying I've received remarks, comments from residents to the effect that lines painted in the fashion we're talking about can be somewhat distracting or confusing excuse me, to tennis players. Is there a way to do this so that to minimize that confusion, to make the pickleball lines more distinct?
I'm going to be talking to the contractor slash consultant that does this. His company does this exclusively, as well as professional tennis courts. I'm going to find out from him what the best contrasting colors would be so that it's non-disruptive to the tennis players, yet still visible for the pickleball players. So we still need to kind of work through that. I think this is done. This has been done all over the country, so it's not new, but we're going to find the best solution there with color matching and non-disruptive to either sports.
Okay, yes, I would hope that could be done. I mean, the other comment is that tennis players object it's noisier than tennis. I'm not sure there is a remedy for that, but maybe that's something we can find a way to keep track of as well. How many people are offended by that or distracted by it? Not just people playing tennis, but people walking by or in residents in the area.
Yeah, I think overall the public, and including the tennis players, will be not so upset, but I think that it'll work out pretty good.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I will open it up to members of the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard? And if so, if you would come up, speak for 3 minutes, no more than 3 minutes. Is there anybody on Zoom?
There are no hands raised. Sorry, they took their hand down.
Okay.
They put it back up.
If you would please come up and speak into the microphone for no more, yes. That's required. And I'll set it for 3 minutes.
I have a good friend who loves pickleball, and she plays all the time. And I just want to know if it's difficult to learn, because tennis is very hard. I wondered if you have training sessions or how you learn how to play pickleball.
So so you know, Ms. Call, we have a rule that is we're not allowed to have members of the public ask at council
No, I don't know
meetings.
anything about that because I'm in a microwave situation.
Ask staff. So they're not allowed, but I certainly do know that we have discussed, the recreation opportunities in connection with the pickleball edition, including, classes and that kind of thing, because it is all the rage. With that, are there any other members of the public that wish to be heard? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council.
1 moment, please. Robert Archer.
Okay. And you have no more than 3 minutes, if you would, please.
Thank you. Unfortunately, of course, this is the same discussions going on across the country in numerous communities, and it's kind of a zero-sum game politics. It's either pickleball or a tennis court. Martina Navratilova noted the need to build pickleball courts. And so I think this is an issue well beyond Ross, and it's an opportunity for Ross to take some leadership, determine what's going on in the rest of the county and adjacent communities and in the county, and look to establish some kind of process for new pickleball courts. I appreciate this being a trial, and I think the monitoring of it by Ross Recreation is an important part of it that needs to be clarified and presented to the council. How will a reservation system work for that court? So I recommend that that be part of the trial, how much use there is, etc. So I think the need is great, but I also note that the enthusiasm of what nationally are about 4.5 to 5 million pickleball players and growing. There are 21.5 million tennis players. So I hope that the urgency of this is addressed carefully over the next year. and done in a way that it's fairly systematic. And we have good data at the end of it, including the possibility of the county beginning some assessment of expanding and establishing new facilities somewhere in the county. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we will close the public comment and bring it back to the council. Are there any council comments?
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Once the lines are painted on the pickleball court, it does not preclude tennis from being played on that same court. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And do you all have some type of monitoring in mind to determine how many pickleball users are using the courts?
So as of right now, the tennis court and platform tennis court facility is all first come, first serve. We have not implemented a reservation system just because of the bandwidth of such a small department. It would be really difficult to monitor that. It doesn't mean it can't happen. But I think we also we get feedback whether we like it or not. So I'm sure that we will be hearing from people if it starts to be that they can't get on the courts because there's pickleball happening or vice versa. And at that point, it would be a way to know that maybe we need to do something else in order to have a different form of monitoring, perhaps a sign-in sheet, something as simple as that to begin, where you can just have people on an honor basis, kind of so that we know how many people are coming. We have something physical to look at and say, okay, we had this many players on this day, and we can have check, do they play pickleball or tennis? So something as simple as that to then perhaps, if we need to move forward with a different kind of system, that's another option.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other comments? Do we have a motion?
Do we need a motion on this? Yes? So I will make a motion to direct staff to implement a trial pickleball program by adding 4 pickleball court lines to 1 tennis court to make a multi-use facility.
Can you add to the motion to appropriate funding in the amount of $10,000 from the facility and equipment fund to complete the work?
Yes, I will add that, and I will also add that we will revisit this sometime in the fall to make sure that it's working for pickleball players as well as tennis court users.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
With a vote of 4, the motion passes.
All right, with that, we're going to move on to public hearing on planning projects part 2. We'll begin with item 18, which is 8 North Road, demolition design review, nonconformity permit and accessory dwelling unit, and town council consideration of adoption of resolution number 2287. Is there a staff report?
Yes, good evening again. The applicant is requesting approval of a demolition design review, accessory dwelling unit, and nonconformity permit to allow for renovation of the existing home, porch, and deck and garage. The project proposes to construct a new 2-car garage with a gable roof, which will connect to the main house by a passageway. The new garage will match the existing home with wood shingle siding and a composite shingle roof. A new deck is being proposed above the passageway. Will have painted wood guardrails. There will be a new driveway gate, entrance gate, outdoor kitchen in the backyard, and the front porch will be rebuilt. The project also includes an ADU over 16 feet high, which requires town council approval, and new landscape and hardscape is also being proposed throughout the property. The ADR reviewed the project at the November 15, 2022 meeting and recommended that the project complied with the design review guidelines and criteria. The applicant has amended the plans according to the ADR members' advice. The changes include lowering the plate height of the ADU to 9 feet, extending and proposed hedge along the rear lot line further south to meet the existing redwood trees, and the new garage roof slope to match the main house roof. Staff recommends that the Town Council adopt resolution number 2287, approving design review, demolition, ADU, and nonconformity permit for the subject property as described. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any member of council have question for staff? Yes.
Have there been any objections to this project specifically?
There has not.
Next, does anybody other member of council have a question or comment? Okay. Next, I'm going to turn it over to the project applicant to see if they would like to give a presentation. If you do, you have a total of 15 minutes. Council might ask you a question. If you want to, you can reserve some time after the public speaks. Would the project applicant like to speak?
There's no hands raised.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll bring it to the members of the public. Would any member of the public like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public item and bring it back to the council for discussion. I just wanted to make the comment that I didn't get a response till quite late from the project applicant asking, me to come out to see the property. And so I wasn't able to coordinate that with them and got there kind of late. And I feel like it's a big enough project that I would have liked that orientation from the applicant or their, planning person. Because I didn't totally understand everything just seeing the site plans, and I was a little frustrated by that. Did anyone else have that similar issue?
Can I just make a general statement? I think in this cycle, we had the burden to reach out to each applicant or architect to arrange site visits. And in the past, the applicant has reached out to each of us. And I think that's a better system to do that on Friday once the packet and the staff reports are available. So maybe we need to remind the applicants again that that's kind of our custom and that works best for the council.
Right. I mean, I will say that I like Barbara Chambers' work and she does beautiful work. So it's absolutely no comment on the design. But like in the back, I had questions about that grade differential and what the effect of the redwood tree was. And, I kind of wanted to understand the porch change a little bit. And, I guess I had questions about what was driving the various changes. And I just felt like it was a big enough project that I didn't feel like those have totally been answered. I'm not sure if I can 100% get there with staff. I don't know if anybody else had that concern, but I almost was wondering if we shouldn't continue the item just to get some more, a better explanation. Did anyone feel like first off, maybe I will ask staff, can you explain what's happening? The ADU in the back is going over like was it a 4-foot grade differential? So I couldn't tell if the grade was coming back, if the grade was going down. And it's a pretty big sized building in that back area.
Is the project architect, Barbara Chambers, on Zoom?
Okay, why don't we open it up to the project applicant?
Thank you.
Because I didn't realize that. I would have directed those questions to her.
Thank you.
Barbara, go ahead. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I just joined, so I heard part of the question about the grade. The grade in the back by the ADU goes naturally downhill. So that's, the pool was existing, the swimming pool was existing, so that the ADU really, there was no place else to put it, basically. So we put it parallel to the pool in the back, and the grade in the rear of the ADU, which nobody can see, basically, goes off like, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet in the back. And underneath the ADU, we had some storage area for, you know, just basic storage, like a 7-foot, but it's all sort of underground. Does that answer the question?
No, I remember being out there and I thought that the grade didn't slope there. I thought there was a brick retaining wall there.
Well, the grade slopes off in the back.
But isn't there also a retaining wall that this project is scaling on either side of?
Which, hang on. Sorry, which sheet do you have a question on?
It's not a sheet, it's just the site conditions I observed when I was out there. And
Well, it's sloping to the back of the site, to the rear of the site. So that, I mean, otherwise it would be fairly flat. So from the street, I mean, you walk down into the site and then the pool area is flat. And at the back of the ADU, that's where it slopes off. At the front of the site, you know, there's a big dip, but then in the back by the pool, all that is flat. And at the back of the ADU, it dips down. And in terms of the retaining walls there for the play area, I think the landscape architect is here as well, who can address that.
what sheet were you referring to?
Is the landscape architect here as well on Zoom?
And I'm sorry, where is the retaining wall that you commented?
Well, that's a holding tank there, in the back.
I have it up here on the screen. Yep. Right in the back. This is the ADU.
But where the story poles were, it actually spanned on either side of that, is what I thought I saw. And then it also went right up into the redwood trees, like so that you would clearly have to limb those redwood trees if the story poles are in the right place, or you'd have to, I think more likely you'd be removing those. And I mean, they were touching, you know, branches of the redwood trees.
Well, a few of the trees were being taken down there. That is, is our landscape architect here to address the tree removal?
Those trees are proposed. I'm not the landscape architect, but I'm fairly familiar with the project. Those trees are proposed to be removed. They've spoken, the property owners have spoken with the neighbors in the back. It was reviewed at the ADR, and that is one of the reasons that the ADR recommended that they continue that hedge along that, I think it's the southern property line. While the ADR mentioned they weren't in favor of removing trees, but if it was a sort of, you know, if it worked between the neighbors, then they felt like they could support it.
And the neighbors in this case were very in favor of removing those. They felt that they were too large. They tried to work this out with the previous owner, and they were not able to work out something. And with this owner, they were quite happy about that tree removal. So in the back, between the two properties to the rear, they spoke at the ADR meeting.
And can I just understand the ADU, you know, is obviously ministerial.
Except for the height.
Yeah, but the square footage of that ADU is what?
About 800 square feet. I think it's, is it exactly 800?
It's the square footage work, it's the height because of the, as you were referencing earlier, the grade. So it
Yeah,
exceeds the
it's
6
under
feet.
the allowable for ministerial. The only reason that we're before you is that it we're slightly above the 15-foot because of the slope of the grade, the natural grade in the rear. So otherwise, if the property was flat, we wouldn't have that before you.
Would you mind just taking a look at what the ADU square footage is?
Yeah. It's 800 square feet.
Does any other member of the council have a question? Okay, thank you for the presentation. I'm gonna, since I'll bring it back to the council and close the public hearing. So, does any member of the council have a question or comment?
No, I'd like to make a motion to, sorry?
I did bring it, I did open it up to the public previously, but thank you. Is there any, separate from a motion?
If I may, I think there may be some confusion of whether it was opened or closed. So is there a member of the public? Do you have?
Thank you. Then I will open it up to public comment, seeing as it might have been a confusing order and maybe I just skipped over that. And if you come up to speak, we ask that you please state your name and speak into the microwave.
My name is the microwave. My name is Nancy Tully, and my husband Herb is here, and we are the neighbors that you were speaking about that live, right. Their property borders our property. My husband and I will say, and yes, we are in favor, but when you were talking about the redwood trees, we know that the trees on the north side, smaller redwood trees, all those trees are coming out. We're fine with it. You were commenting about the redwood tree limbs that were where the ADU was, and you had your red circle sort of going around the real tall redwood trees. I mean, it was our understanding those were staying, but we believe, I think there are 5 of them that might be staying, and they're right sort of where the ADU is. But it sounded to me like all of you were more of the impression all the trees were coming out. We didn't think that. We hope as neighbors that those redwood trees get trimmed, opened up some. And yes, potentially we might see a little bit of their ADU, but it wasn't our understanding. Although if you ask me, do I love the redwood trees? No, I don't necessarily, but it was the understanding that I think, the town wasn't going to let them take out those really large, mature redwood trees, 5 of them. All the others were coming out, and we're fine about that. But so, earlier you were going in the area of the mature redwood trees that when we went to the ADR meeting, there was no discussion that the discussion was those stayed. So if you're confused, I'm a little, we're confused too.
Thank you. I'll ask staff to clarify that.
Excuse me?
I'll ask staff to clarify that.
Right.
Thank you. So do you have any other comment that you?
No, I mean, totally in favor of trees all along and that hedge being built. We're fine about that. There's no, and even the large redwood trees, we envision that they're going to be opened up a little bit, that they're not going to be this mass that is presently. They've never been trimmed before, so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's have staff respond so we understand. Typically,
Thank
it's
you.
like within 5 feet of the property of the house.
Thank you. As I said earlier, I'm not the landscape architect, and I was incorrect. There's a note, these trees right here that I was circling to be removed are not going to be removed. There is a note on the plans that say these trees are to remain. So I apologize for that.
Okay. So it just the ones that are touching the ADU?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comment or discussion of council? Is there any other member, I'm sorry, is there any other member of the
Yes.
public?
Mr. Cruz?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with Erica Timbrell Design. We're the landscape architects on it. And yeah, the trees are remaining. They do need to be trimmed up a little bit, the 5 large ones. And we are keeping those. And the question about the retaining wall towards the back by the play area, it's only an 18-inch play or 18-inch height maximum. And it's just to level off the play area to the lawn. So that was the only, I think that was one of the questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other member of the public?
Hi, I'm the property owner, Clara Ditter. If you have any personal questions for me, I'm happy to answer as well and on.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there any other member of the public? Do any council members, we will close the public comment time and bring it back to the council. Does the council have any further comments or deliberation?
I just note that on all their documents, they show the 5 trees remaining in various iterations.
Thank you. And then the, on this item, is there a provision? We've gotten a lot of emails from residents about 2 different items, but I think primarily the other one, but is the, it's the same area. So I guess is the parking on site for construction a condition of approval?
We have a condition of approval that requires a parking and staging plan, as well as a construction management plan prior to building permit issuance, and we will be involved with that parking and staging plan.
In consideration of the fact that this is an area where people don't feel like there's adequate parking.
Correct.
Thank you. And so is there a motion?
Bill,
I'll move to approve the resolution, approve the project.
a second.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
With a vote of 4, the motion passes.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is number 19. It's 196 Lagunitas Road demolition design review and nonconformity permit and town council consideration of adoption of resolution number 2286.
Good evening, once again. The project before you tonight is at 196 Lagunitas Road. The project site is located on the upper portion of Lagunitas Road, across from Duff Lane. The property is a large lot, far exceeding the 10,000 square foot minimum lot size. The project tonight proposes to demolish the 3 existing structures on the property, which are all non-conforming in nature. The existing dwelling units total 7,375 square feet. The property also includes a pool and a 2-car detached garage. The project before you tonight proposes construction of a 6,901 square foot home, including a new pool, lawn area, outdoor dining, and new landscaping. The proposed home will be consolidated towards Lagunitas Road and conforms to all the development requirements of the R1B10 zoning. The project requires a nonconformity permit to match the existing floor area of the home on the property. And as mentioned, the existing is 7,375 and the home proposes 6,901. The primary exterior materials include cedar siding, bronze anodized steel for the fascia and windows, synthetic wood louvers, basalt pavers, stone and masonry veneers. New landscaping and hardscape are proposed throughout the property. The project was reviewed at the November 15th ADR hearing, and they unanimously recommended that the project is consistent with the purpose of design review and the design review criteria. The ADR discussed the project and recommended approval with a few recommendations. They agreed that the height of the home should be lowered by 2 feet and to remove the second-story balcony at the bedroom at the east side property line. The project architect has submitted revised plans, which are before the council tonight, in light of the ADR comments, reduce the height and remove that balcony. Prior to the November 15th ADR hearing, staff received 10 emails in support of the project. There was 1 email from the neighbor to the east. She was supportive of the project. However, she was concerned about privacy. Those privacy concerns were reviewed at the ADR hearing, and the plans have been amended to reflect her concerns. At the time of the finalization of the council report, there were no emails received. This week, however, 5 emails have been received. 1 with no objections to the project, however, concerns about parking on Walnut. The second and third emails received also had concern about parking on Walnut. The 4th had concerns about parking on Olive and Walnut. And that email agreed with the ADR members that the project needed to be lowered. And the 5th email that I received was not supportive of the project. They felt that the home was out of place with the surrounding properties on Lagunitas. Tonight, it is recommended that the town council consider adoption of Resolution 2286, approving demolition, design review, and nonconformity permit for the project as described. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the council have a question of staff?
I have a question. Rebecca, is the project outside of the front yard setback?
The project conforms to the front yard setback requirement. So it's not encroaching into the front yard setback.
Are there any, there are no variances being asked?
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Elizabeth, I have a question. I noticed on the picture of the house, there's a fence and then there's shrubbery on the inside of the fence. Do we have a policy that we ask homeowners to put landscaping on the outside of the fence? You know, so that the appearance from the street, you know, is more, you know, lush and not just a fence that's visible.
I can't think of a policy off the top of my head that requires landscaping in front of a front yard fence. We do have extensive, you know, landscape design review criteria that could warrant requiring landscaping in front of a front yard fence.
Okay. And with that, I'll open it up to the applicant to give a presentation, and should you wish to do so, you can take 15 minutes, but you don't have to. And you can also save some time if you like to respond to public comment.
Thanks very much. I'm Cameron Breitner. This is my wife, Elizabeth. I think we just wanted to thank you for moving this item up on the agenda. And we'll let Sean Bailey, our architect, go ahead and say a few words. We'll reserve the rest of our time if that's okay.
Thank you.
Sean Bailey, who's on Zoom, would like to present.
Mr. Bailey?
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you to the council members for hearing our project tonight. I'm going to keep it brief because I know there's a full agenda. The project is it takes 3 non-compliant existing dwelling units and proposes 1 main residence that fits within the building envelope. It's fully compliant with all the Ross planning code, and we're requesting no variances, and it meets all the town of Ross design guidelines. We enjoyed very positive neighbor support for the advisory hearing, including 12 letters of support, including all the adjacent neighbors. As Rebecca covered, our hearing with the advisory board was positive, but the two things they asked us to look at were the max height. So we've dropped that height by 2 feet per their request. I just wanted to point out for those of you who visited the site, the story poles reflect the old height. So those would come down 2 feet from what was shown on site for those story poles. So with that, our height's now 3 foot 4 inches below the max height, and it's 3 foot 7 inches below the existing main residence roof. And then we also removed the upper level deck per the request of the advisory board. Lastly, recently the letters that have come in regarding parking issues, I think we can all understand frustration with that. And what I would say is we're obviously intend to follow all the construction rules the town of Ross has in place. And I think our site is set up well. It's a larger site for that area of Ross, which should accommodate a good deal of vehicle parking for construction workers and staging. And with that, I will wrap up and save time for any other questions you guys may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you have any further presentation?
No.
Okay. Does any member of the council have a question of the applicants? All right. So with that, we will open it up to members of the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard?
Mr. Strata?
It might actually
You
be our
need to
landscape
unmute
architect.
yourself.
Yeah, Dustin is our landscape architect. I'm not sure if he intended to try to speak, but there you
Yeah,
go.
I just wanted to address Elizabeth's question about planting in front of the fence. We are planning to do that. We're not allowed to show that anything outside of our property line in this round of design, but we are going to use a mix of manzanitas and some other California natives in front of the fence.
Thank you.
Hey, and with that, we'll open it up to members of the public. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak? Okay, so we don't have a member of the public speaking. So did you want to follow up with any other? Okay. Thank you. With that, we'll close it to the public hearing and bring it back for deliberation and discussion among the council. Does any council member have discussion or a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 2286.
I will second the motion.
Thank you.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Kirschner?
Aye.
Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Thank you. With a vote of 4, the motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move on to the items that we skipped. And it is 7:30. I bet we can get out by 8:30 if we do this efficiently. Next item is item 16. It's town council discussion of summary of public comments on the draft housing element submitted during the 30-day review period and provide direction to staff to send the draft housing element to Sacramento and start the legally required 90-day housing and community development review. And I will turn it over to staff for the report.
With Diane Bhatia, the town's planning and design consultant for the housing element. So we began this project in March, kicked it off, and over the last 8 months, we've worked with the community and a variety of different stakeholders to put together a plan to help the town satisfy the legal requirements for the housing element, while also trying to preserve and enhance the aspects of town character that are so valued so highly by Ross residents. The draft plan was released for public review on October 18th. And so tonight, I'd like to introduce you to the draft housing element, provide a recap of the community feedback we've received on the draft, and if appropriate, we'd like to receive direction to send the draft up to Sacramento to begin the state review period. Under state law, the Department of Housing and Community Development has 90 days to review and respond, provide comment on the draft housing element. So the action by the council tonight is not to adopt, but merely to start the state review process. I have a presentation. In my presentation tonight, I'd like to provide a little background, including touching on the legal requirements for the housing element and a recap of the process. I'll provide an overview of the content of the draft and a summary of community comments received, and then in closing, touch a little on next steps. So the project actually involves three components. The first is the housing element. By law, the town must update the housing element of its general plan to accommodate its assessed share of the regional housing need for the coming 8 years. Updating the housing element triggers the need to update the safety element, especially in Ross in consideration of natural hazard risk, flooding, wildfire, liquefaction slope stability. As we think about accommodating new housing, it's important to think about safety. So there will be an update to the housing, or to the safety element as well. And then because implementing the housing element could result in environmental impacts, we'll be preparing a focused environmental impact report. So the housing element is, of course, part of the general plan. It's one of the 8 required elements of the general plan, along with land use, circulation, open space, conservation, noise, and safety. It's essentially the town's plan for accommodating local housing needs, and it must be updated once every 8 years to plan for the next 8 years. It's subject to a variety of different statutory requirements, including, as I mentioned, review and certification by the California Department of Housing and Community Development. There are several required components of the housing element. Top among these is an inventory of sites that are available for housing, and this is usually shown on a map and in a table, and the table includes realistic capacity for housing on each of those sites based on past performance in the town and consideration of other factors like environmental constraints or market demand and market factors. Additionally, the housing element needs to include an assessment of local housing needs based on a review of census data to identify any special needs groups in the community, a review of potential constraints to housing, which may include regulatory constraints or environmental constraints or market-based factors, and also an assessment of fair housing issues, which means if there are any groups within the community, disadvantaged groups that may have constrained access to housing. That means perhaps through discrimination against people with disabilities or of linguistic or ethnic minorities. And then finally, the final component is a program of implementing actions that would address any of the constraints, special housing needs, or any fair housing issues identified. RHNA is a term you hear a lot associated with the housing element. It stands for the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, and it essentially means the total number of new housing units that the town must plan to accommodate in the zoning for the coming period. And Ross's allocation for the next 8-year cycle is 111 units. These 111 units are broken out into 4 affordability levels based on the area median income in Marin County. So households that make less than 50% of the area median income are considered very low income, and households that make more than 120% are considered above moderate income. This is a snapshot of our overall process. As I said, we did a variety of community outreach to meet people where they are and build input that's reflected in the draft that's in front of you tonight. This includes pop-up events at the post office. We did a series of stakeholder interviews and presentations to different groups in the community, including RPOA, ADR group, the Age-Friendly Task Force. We did focus group discussions with architects, for example. We held 2 community workshops, and we did an online survey. And all of the input we received progressively throughout the process has gone into the draft and helped to refine it. So let me turn now to an overview of the content, starting with the housing sites. The draft element includes a map and an inventory of 10 sites that are available for housing. And all of these sites today have zoning that allows for housing, so no rezoning is necessary. All of the sites were screened by town staff to ensure feasibility, and the list has been refined over time to reflect input from the community. The sites shown include a number of vacant parcels with residential zoning that allows for housing. It also includes the Branson School site, where 10 additional housing units for teachers could be accommodated. It anticipates 6 housing units on the Civic Center site as part of the Civic Center master plan. And it includes 6 units on a section of the post office parking lot on the south of that property adjacent to downtown to provide workforce housing for perhaps teachers, postal staff, or other people who work in Ross. Collectively, these 10 sites have a capacity for 41 units, which is short of the 111 units that's been assigned to Ross as part of the RHNA. So there's a shortfall of 70 units. And the draft housing element incorporates several strategies to bridge that gap. First among them is promoting and incentivizing accessory dwelling units. ADUs can be counted toward RHNA. Because of their smaller size, they might often be affordable. They might have rents that are affordable to members of the local workforce. State guidance allows the town to project during the planning period a number of units based on the rate that ADUs have been permitted since 2018. The town enacted an ADU ordinance in 2020, and since then, on average, the town has permitted 6 ADUs per year, although that's been increasing. This year already, 9 ADUs have been approved, and on the basis of that performance, and additionally, a strong suite of programs in the draft housing element to further incentivize and promote ADUs, we're projecting 10 ADUs per year for a total of 80 over the planning cycle. Another strategy has to do with new state law that allows for smaller scale housing development on certain single family properties. It's Senate Bill 9 or SB 9 that allows property owners who choose to do so to either subdivide their lot and build up to 2 new units on each of the lots, or to build another unit on their lot under current zoning. There are many parcels in Ross that could potentially qualify for SB 9 and would give the property owner that option if they choose to pursue it. We did some analysis to identify the best candidates, and we found 48 properties that are highly suited for SB 9. And those 48 properties altogether could support 148 new units. Now, that's not likely to happen over the planning period, if ever, but we're assuming that 15% of that total capacity may come to fruition over the 8-year planning period, and that would mean 22 SB 9 units. Additionally, at the Branson School, there are today 5 existing multifamily units that are currently used by teachers. The Branson School has expressed an interest in deed restricting them so that they remain affordable to people making less than 80% of the area median income. And based on our consultations with the state, those deed restricted units would count as new units, and so they can also be counted towards RHNA. So when we look at the inventory again with those additional strategies factored in, the 80 ADUs over the planning period, the 5 deed restricted units, and the 22 SB 9 housing units, we get to a total of 148 units. And as you can see, this would allow the town to meet its RHNA obligations at all income levels with a buffer. So shifting now to an overview of the implementing programs. The town's current housing element has a section called Framework for Action, and it includes a range of policies and programs organized under 5 key goals. That is a solid base, which we have kept in place, But we've layered in some additional programs that are needed to demonstrate how the town will meet its RENA obligations and ensure compliance with other aspects of state law. The new programs can be broadly grouped under 3 categories. The first of these is new programs for above moderate housing. And some considerations here are the fact that fees in Ross, development fees in Ross, tend to be higher than in other surrounding communities. And the design review process, while it's very important for preserving local community character, can add time and cost to the process. And so in consideration of those factors, we've included several new programs. One of them involves doing a comprehensive fee study to make sure that the fees charged by Ross are commensurate with the costs incurred by the town. There's a program that involves streamlining the design review process, keeping it in place, of course, recognizing its value, but looking at ways to tweak and perhaps reduce time and cost for some applicants. There's a program also that looks at facilitating development on adjacent vacant single-family lots under common ownership. There's one site in particular on the inventory that actually is composed of 3 separate sites. All of them are substandard size, but if the FAR could be calculated over the totality of the property, which is under common ownership and adjacent, that would facilitate meeting the town's above moderate RENA. So there's a program in there to that end. And then there's a program about promoting the availability of SB9 for property owners who wish to take advantage of it. The second group of programs has to do with promoting workforce housing. And the factors to consider here are the fact that there are relatively few sites in Ross that meet the strict requirements for lower income RENA sites, particularly around size and freedom from environmental constraints. There are, however, some regulatory levers available to the town to incentivize workforce housing. And so the programs have been added in consideration of those factors. And specifically, there is a program which would commit the town to developing workforce housing as part of the Civic Center Master Plan development project. There's a program that would have the town look for a nonprofit partner to partner with in developing workforce housing on a portion of the post office parking lot site, again, to help meet the lower income RENA obligations. And then there's a program that reduces some of the parking requirements. And this is specifically for caretaker units and multifamily units. It would provide exceptions to the requirement for covered parking where it can be screened from view. Parking can add as much as 15% to the total cost of the project. And so this is seen as a way of incentivizing or facilitating workforce housing to help meet the town's obligations. And then the final set of programs has to do with ADU production. Some factors to consider here is that anecdotally, we know that Ross has some unpermitted ADUs, things that may have been built in the past, not up to code, but those, if legalized, can be counted towards RENA. The cost of permitting and constructing an ADU can be a barrier for some people. And then navigating the process also can be daunting for homeowners. So in consideration of those factors, we've developed a suite of programs intended to promote and incentivize ADU production. They include an amnesty program that would offer incentives for anyone with a unpermitted ADU on their property to bring it up to code, and those can be counted towards RENA. There's a program involving pre-approved ADU plans. This is a concept of developing a set of plans that go through ADR that have been approved by the council that homeowners could then select from as an option to build, and understanding that it's already approved, and that takes a lot of the risk and a lot of the mystery out of the process. So hopefully that would streamline ADU production. There's other programs offering technical assistance to help connect homeowners with civil engineers and landscape architects and architects, and help them navigate the process as well. There's a program involving a development fee discount for any homeowner who's willing to deed restrict their ADUs so that it would be available to households making less than 80% of the AMI, and then some tweaks to the ADU ordinance to bring it into compliance with new state law. So as I said, the draft housing element was released on October 18th for public review. During that period, we also held a community workshop to receive comments and to introduce the content of the plan to the community. In total, we received 53 letters during the period, and this is a summary of the comments. All of the letters, I would say, are included in the packet, so the council can see them all. But by far and away, the number one comment had to do with concerns for housing on the southern portion of the post office parking lot. A number of those commenters suggested that it would be better placed if it were shifted to the Civic Center site. So instead of 6 units, there would be 12 units constructed on the Civic Center site in place of the post office site. There were also some comments about Program 2A, which is the program that would seek to streamline the ADR process. Both of these comments came from ADR group members themselves, so there's details of that of those recommendations in the staff report. Another commenter raised some questions about the feasibility of the pre-approved ADU plans in Ross. Just given the varied topography and site conditions in Ross, the commenter was questioning how applicable those plans might be, because there's many unique features in Ross. And that's definitely true, but there may be some benefit, at least in having plans, even if you can't pull them right off the shelf, maybe they get you a lot of the way there, and with a few tweaks, to customize it to particular site conditions, there may still be some benefit in those plans. And then the fourth point to point out was that there was an advocacy group called the Campaign for Fair Housing Elements who also submitted a letter, not a Ross resident, but a person particularly concerned with affordable housing in the Bay Area, and that letter advocated for increasing density and building more multifamily housing throughout Ross. So quickly then, looking at next steps, as I say, we've completed the 30-day public review, and the purpose of the hearing tonight is to determine whether it's appropriate to send the draft up to Sacramento to start that 90-day review period. In the new year, we would then shift our attention to the safety element and take advantage of some multi-jurisdictional hazard analysis that the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority is producing to help inform content for the safety element. We'd prepare the draft EIR, which would address both the safety element and the housing element. And then when the comments come back from HCD, we'd revise the housing element and bring all 3 documents in front of the council for consideration in adoption hearings anticipated for May of next year. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of council?
I have a question. On the buffers, what is the bare minimum buffer that we need for each of those categories?
Yeah, there's no rule for what the buffer needs to be. As a rule of thumb, a lot of jurisdictions say 10%, but I've worked in jurisdictions that went with 5%. I think the issue to be conscious of is the law says at all times the housing element or the zoning map must have capacity to meet the RHNA. So if one of the projects in our inventory or one of the sites doesn't develop as anticipated, say it develops with fewer units, the buffer is there to make sure that you still have sufficient capacity in the inventory. The danger with lowering the buffer too far would be that maybe one of the sites doesn't develop with the number of units anticipated, and then you're in a pinch to rezone something to find another unit. So, I mean, I think 5% is maybe as far as you'd want to go. I don't know if you'd want to go lower.
So 5% would be prudent.
I think, yeah, at least 5% is what I would recommend.
If I may supplement that, I think HCD has a recommendation of over 10%. And it's my understanding if you go lower than 10%, they may look a little bit closer at your housing element to make sure that, that lower threshold will hold up over the years.
And are other jurisdictions proposing housing on their own land and becoming landowners in order to meet the housing element?
There are some jurisdictions that that are doing that. I think it definitely demonstrates meaningful action, which is something that that HCD will be looking for. It demonstrates a commitment on the part of the town to satisfy local housing needs. I think in Ross's case in particular, because of the price of land, constructing affordable housing for a developer that a nonprofit developer, affordable housing developer that doesn't have the advantage is daunting. And so I think it's an important gesture on the part of the town that will go a long way towards making that meaningful contribution that that the HCD is looking for.
And in that kind of a scenario, would the town serve as the landlord for those units?
So in the case, not necessarily is what I would say. If we think of the situation on the town center site versus the situation on the post office site as envisioned in the draft are different. In the case of the Civic Center site, it's proposed that as part of the master plan, 6 units would be constructed by the town. On the post office site, what's proposed as part of that program is that the town would look for a nonprofit partner and would work with that nonprofit partner to facilitate development. And that through that partnership, the town may retain ownership. However, the operation and maintenance of the units would probably be through the responsibility of the nonprofit operator. But that's just as envisioned in the programs now. There's nothing to say that you couldn't find a partner to operate and manage the housing on the Civic Center site as well, if that's what you wanted to do.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So let's assume, we do have to rebuild our facilities, so that's really probably happening within the cycle. And if we are contemplating building 6 or more units on the Civic Center site, then would we necessarily, and maybe this is for you, Town Manager Johnson, would we necessarily have to go out to bond to residents to fund the construction of those? Because I already think people are going to balk when we go out for a bond with the facilities as is. So the idea that they're going to subsidize affordable or workforce housing on this site seems daunting to me.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Breckus, for the question. I think discussion of financing, while I understand it is of utmost concern to the council, it's just at this point in time, it's just so premature because we've just begun the discussion of we've just initiated a planning process for the Civic Center site. The council made a big decision about the fire station last year. However, there's so much other input we're going to be collecting from the community and opportunities for the council and ADR to put into it, and the information from the consultants about what are the options, what functions can we fit here, and what would that look like, and what are the needs, and then coupled with that, the scope of work for the consultant team is to put together costing. And that, of course, would be very important for the council's decision-making process about what this master plan would look like here. So I think even before you add in the element of housing, how the council ultimately ends up funding this is just, we just don't know at this time. The council has also been doing a very good job of every year in the budget of saving money. You know that you have this need to renovate or rebuild this site, and you have been very pragmatically and aggressively saving money for that. And so it depends on how long this process takes. When the decision is made about how much money, if there will be a gap between what you've saved and what the project is going to cost, and then if there is a gap, how the council is going to want to finance it. And there's going to be different options you have. And one option could very well be going to the voters, but there could very well be other options the council could decide. So just at this time, it's just, it's premature to really get in the weeds because we don't know what the project is, let alone how it would be financed. But I agree with some of your concerns.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
So I have a question, and maybe this is in the weeds also, but in thinking about the post office site, if there are 6 units there, presumably that will mean 6 to 9 cars for those units, and putting the 6 units there presumably will take away 6 existing, or approximately 6 existing parking places. So we're looking at 12 to 15 parking places that have to be created if we want to remain net neutral. And then that parking lot serves as a loop around for cars to make U-turns, including everyone who drops off their child at Ross School. And we would want to maintain that loop around. So my question is, do we know if there's room at that far end of the parking lot for a structure for 6 units plus 15 parking places plus the loop around? Do we know if that will fit?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I was going to say that the concept is to design that portion of the site so that all the existing parking would remain. And additionally, there's a program in the housing element that proposes to do a downtown area plan that would think holistically about how to integrate that new housing. There is already a policy in the general plan that looks at doing a downtown plan to consider circulation and business vitality and other things. And so the program in the housing element would pick up on the program that's in the general plan and expand it to think about how to integrate the housing and also do the circulation and the other aspects of the general plan policy that were envisioned. Yeah, I think the other comment I would offer is that there is potential to look at the striping of the existing parking spaces along the Ross Common. They're striped quite wide right now, and if you look at restriping them, there's a possibility of creating more parking space there. So all of these things could be considered holistically as part of that downtown plan, which is envisioned in a program in the draft.
I know that plan had been looked at years ago, and that that loop was considered. There was a consideration to remove it, and there was quite an outcry about that it simply would, totally destroy the traffic flow in the center of town. So I have to say I'm a little bit concerned about a downtown traffic plan that addresses traffic, because the traffic is well addressed as is, but relies heavily on that loop around in the southern part of the post office. So is a parking garage underneath these 6 structures, is that considered? I mean, is that something that would be used to make up, the 12 spots or so that, need to be added and get removed? Or are we nowhere close to designing that sort of thing?
Yeah, we haven't gotten into the design of the site, but that would be the concept to find a way to include to have the housing essentially sit over the parking so that there's no loss of parking space.
I have a question following up on that. It occurred to me, I mean, our post office, you might not know that history, but it's terrible shape. And I think it's a logical building that we might need to rebuild at some point in time. And so it occurs to me that another option that would probably be cheaper and less impactful would be to, over the existing footprint of the post office, have one floor with 2 units, maybe it's 3 units, I don't know what the square footage. And then you go up 2 or 3 floors and you get those 6 units there. Is it possible that we could state in the housing unit that, we want to look at housing either over the post office or over the post office parking area?
Yes, absolutely. That's a modification that could be made.
Because I think that would be way more desirable for residents to do. And it's a building that it looks historic. We could mimic the historic look of it, but it's not, it's functionally obsolete and actually not in great shape at all.
Yeah, we could look.
I would like to add my support for that idea. I think that makes sense. I mean, I think it's important to understand, we're just talking about concept now. The devil will be in the details. Is a developer interested? Is this really feasible? And Ross is the property owner, so it has the final say. But I think there is a possibility here. I think it's worth making that a broader possibility in our plan to give us more maneuvering room here to see if something that could be found that would work.
Yep.
I also have a question about workforce. That keeps coming up, and I think it is something we're very interested in because our people who, teachers and others, some have to travel great distances, our police officers. So we are very much interested in trying to help them find a place to live that is closer to Ross, or in Ross, actually. Do we have the ability, if we provide these units, to restrict them or to give priority to our workforce? I think you alluded to that earlier, but I wonder if you could elaborate on that.
Yes, there are ways to have that. That has come up in other jurisdictions, and you can have a geographical preference for in your housing element.
Can. Mm-hmm. Julie?
So I have, looking at your chart, table 1, if you look at the low, very low category, it looks like we're way over the 10%. And if you subtract the 6 at the post office and you subtract the 6 at the Civic Center, you get to a 10% buffer. And I'm wondering if it would be prudent in this submission to subtract the 6 and the 6 and keep them in our back pocket, and we're meeting the buffer, and then see what happens, and then resort to those sites if necessary. I'm really hesitant to have the town serve as a landlord or a developer. That's one of the reasons why we decided not to rebuild 6 Redwood. And I just don't think if there's an alternative way to meet the housing element, that would be my preference.
Yeah, I would say, and I alluded to it before, I think, I don't know of any other jurisdiction, or almost no other jurisdiction, that has tried to do its RHNA entirely through ADUs. And particularly, I think that's essentially there would be the Branson units.
Yes.
But it would be even more dependent on ADUs. And I think with our projections right now, we're making a robust projection, and I am expecting pushback from HCD in their review of that. And in particular, I don't think they're going to object at the number so much. They're going to object at how many of those we're counting towards lower income RHNA. We do have a program in the housing element to offer a development fee discount for anyone who deed restricts, But I imagine that the tenor of the comments we're going to get back is really going to focus on wanting to do more to incentivize or even require units for lower income. And so my concern with that approach would be, again, for making this good faith effort in order to put our best foot forward and get more support for a robust projection of ADUs. And I'd be worried that walking it back might make them look more critically at the ADU projection numbers, if you see what I mean. It's totally at the council's discretion to make a decision about which sites go on the draft that's set up to HCD for review. But I think we do need to think sort of strategically about that. And I think if ultimately we're going to have to include a town-owned property, then my recommendation would probably be to do it right out of the gate. Now, that doesn't mean we have to do both necessarily, but I think it would be important to do as much as we can to show that the town is making a commitment.
So in that sense, for the town to make a commitment, I think that that a post office site totally disrupts the center of town in a way that's irreversible. Aesthetics, traffic, parking, I just don't see how it can work walking the site. That I don't see how it fits at all without totally destroying the center of town. But we could take those 6 units, and I know Julie doesn't want to be a landlord, but for the purposes of sending this in, we could take those 6 units and put them on the Civic Center site and have 12 units on our plan that we submit. Is that correct?
That is an option.
Okay.
But then if we take, so if these 12 units are needed and all of a sudden we do go out to bid and we do decide to build and we only build 3, then we have eliminated 9 sites from our plan, and our plan during this entire 8-year cycle has to be sufficient. And so then we could be in difficulties in that way.
But can't we keep looking for sites? Are we limited to only the sites that we propose in this draft, or can we come up with new sites over the 8-year period?
I would say that, it's not off the table, but HCD is, in order to certify, they want to certify on the basis of the sites that we come up with in the next, say, 6 months. They want to certify on the basis of this. They want to see the sites before they certify.
And then, do we have to redo the housing element mid-cycle with another 6 meetings? I don't know that that's smart. I personally, if it were me, and I can bring it out, I would almost shift the housing over the parking lot to the post office, because I think you can really maintain the downtown feel. And would I like it to be 1 story? Sure, but can I live with 3? Yes.
So why don't we call that a site and not necessarily the parking lot of the post office?
That's an option that you can make and be timely.
Absolutely. Yep.
Anybody have any more questions, or shall I open it? Should I open it up?
I have one more question. I've heard that this is kind of a negotiation with HCD, and then I've heard that it's not. And I'm just wondering, because, negotiating, you don't put all your cards on the table at the outset. So in my mind, I wouldn't put any of these, I wouldn't put the Civic Center or the post office sites on the table at the outset. I would wait if it's a negotiation, and I would make them come back and say, well, you have ADUs, you have the 10 at Branson, you're still 10% above you have a 10% buffer, you've really satisfied it, but maybe you haven't really met the spirit. So you need to go back and, look at some other places. And at that point, we could look at Cedars, we could look at Marin Art and Garden, we could look at St. John's, we could look at maybe St. Anselm's. I just hate to I feel like we're kind of giving up at the very first step when maybe ultimately we don't have to do that.
That seems like a better question directed to council. Can you explain whether it's a negotiation or not?
Well, it's not a negotiation. It is, we put our draft housing element, we submit it to HCD, and we have an obligation to adopt our housing element by January 31st. We have an obligation to have a certified housing element by May of 2023. So I think what the consultant is suggesting is to put your best foot forward in order so we can get certification earlier. If we don't get certification, there is a risk that someone can bring a lawsuit and have these decisions of where our site should be imposed by a court.
Could the court impose a site on town-owned property?
Yes, the court can decide which housing inventory sites are appropriate. They can decide, in the meantime, they'll be, in the worst case scenario, the court would prohibit the city from issuing any other permits in the interim, even design review for single family residential, and require the town to adopt a housing element that is prescribed by the court.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to open it to members of the public. Is anybody, member of the public should be heard? And if you do, please raise your hand now or go to the podium. And I would ask that you speak for no more than 3 minutes. And if you would kindly give your name for the record. We need you. I'm sorry.
My hearing has been removed by the microwave, and I could not hear most of what you guys said. And I've already prepared my discussion. So if it sounds like I wasn't listening to you, it's because I couldn't hear you. So anyway, should I go ahead? Now you started. Okay, Barbara Call, 8 Redwood Drive. And first of all, I want to thank you guys very, very much for all the time you put in. It's unbelievable. I could never do it. All the hours you spend is very much appreciated by me. And I know that it sounds like I have an adversarial relationship with you, but I don't. I like you all. I just want you to do the right thing. And the right thing would be to remove that site from the post office parking lot over to the Sir Francis Drake 35, 37 area, what you call the Civic Center. The consultant, when I read the report, which took me forever, the consultant said it's up to you to have the discretionary plan to do that. But really and truly, we have something called the general plan in Ross. And the general plan is very specific in what it says about the downtown area. The general plan says the downtown area should be a business/retail area. Doesn't say anything about low-income housing. So and in addition, the housing element has to be consistent with the elements in the general plan. And this site on the post office parking lot is so bad with regards to the general plan, and I don't think anybody in town supports it. If you moved those 6 units over to the Civic Center site, meaning either, well, number 33 is the fire station, 35 or 37, I mean, goodness, you have 109,000 square feet over there. And if you were to build 6 units on the bottom and 6 units on the top of a 2-story building, you would have plenty of room for the 12 units over there and plenty of space to do that. You would be in compliance with the general plan. The only advantage that was mentioned in the written report was access to parking, to public transportation, and that's much better over at the Civic Center. And also the ability to hire a consulting, what does it say, a nonprofit group to construct and maintain these units. And I think you could do that just as well over at the Civic Center site as you could do downtown. So I really think you need to move those units for obeying the general plan, which you all decided you were going to do when you ran for office. Move them over to the Civic Center site. You would be in compliance with the general plan. You would be able to make the town feel better, because none of these people in the town are in favor of those units in downtown Ross.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Laura Reese, and I live at 12 Brookwood Lane, just around the corner. And I want to thank you all. You all had great questions, and you voiced a lot of my concerns. I think Julie, in particular, is thinking right where I was thinking, because I was listening to your presentation, and I heard all about these ADUs and perhaps additional ways we could be more creative with encouraging people who already have ones that don't conform to conform. I just think there's so many creative things that we could do to avoid at all costs putting housing in our cute little downtown. Our little downtown, it can get very congested. We are in a flood zone. We've had terrible floods here. We've all lived through that. You know, the parking, the children running across the street. We've got to be really think about the safety of the children, the safety of our community, the flooding, just those basic things. And it sounds like we have other creative ways. I'm not just talking to you, but we have other creative ways between the ADUs and the other locations, and maybe not to, you know, I don't understand how it works in terms of when you put something in, is that set in stone? You know, when they okay it, does that mean we can't back out? I mean, I feel like Julie, that we should keep something back. I feel like our little downtown is a treasure, and we should do everything we can to avoid initially putting things in there. Now, I understand maybe ultimately we don't get the ADUs we need, and et cetera, and then we have to look at the little downtown and maybe go over the post office. I don't know, but it does seem like we should be looking at all the other areas other than our little downtown. That's all. And it sounds like we do have some options out there. And we all agree that we want, you know, more housing for people in the community to live. I mean, we all want that. And I would love it if we could have more of the firemen, the policemen, the teachers. I would love it if they could all live in our community. I just think that we have to take care of our little downtown.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody on Zoom who wants to speak? Could you please, everybody who's on Zoom, if you would raise your hand now, if indicating you want to speak. Thank you. If you want to speak.
Mr. Weisel? Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to get the rationale for including the Berg property.
If you would speak for 3 minutes, our protocol and all council's protocol is that we don't respond to people's questions during their public comment. If the council thinks it's appropriate, then we'll direct staff to ask that question. So if you would finish your comments and then we can deal with any of your questions after, that would be appreciated.
Okay, well, I mean, you know, this is a remote area within Ross. It's never going to pass any environmental constraint, EIR that you're going to do. It'll be unbelievably expensive. And I just wonder if you took those into consideration when you included that, which will all come out in the state's review.
Thank you very much for your public comment. Is there anybody else on public comment that wishes to be heard? Okay.
There are no other hands raised.
So we'll bring it back to the council, but I would like staff to respond as to how the Berg site was selected.
Yeah, so we did an analysis of sites that are currently zoned to allow for housing, and we found quite a number, but as you can imagine, a lot of them are in steeply sloped terrain, are odd shaped. And so through that process, we really narrowed it down to things that could feasibly be constructed. And we took on board public comments as well to further winnow the site down. That Berg site in particular does have a number of environmental constraints on it, but it's a relatively large site. And within the steep topography, there are areas that are relatively flatter. And so in consideration of that, it was deemed feasible. There is also interest from the property owner in developing there. And that was also taken into consideration. Because that's one of the things that the state will be looking for in their review will be the feasibility of developing these sites. And if there's property owner interest, then that goes towards the feasibility.
My recollection is the Berg site also, was there 6? What is it called? It's not called the Berg site on here, is it?
I think it is called, at one point we were calling it Bingo, but
Yeah,
now it's been
I see.
revised to Berg.
So the 6 units are contemplated as single-family homes as opposed to 3 single-family homes and 3 ADUs?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so bringing it back to council and closing public comment time, does any council member want to begin with some discussion lead off?
So I have a comment. I think that because of the time crunch, we should send our draft housing element to Sacramento. I think we should try to agree on what that should look like tonight so that we can send it. And my proposal would be that we remove the 6 units from the post office parking lot. I don't care if we put them somewhere else, Civic Center or on top of the post office, but I would not be in favor of sending in a draft housing element that has any site, any units on the post office parking lot site.
Okay. You know, just so people have the benefit of this idea, because I didn't mention it before, but for the St. Anselm's Church, I had the same question or concern whether we could broaden it. It's currently contemplated in the parking lot that we know we need for Branson parking. So my other question is, I know that there is housing at the St. Anselm's Church. It is not reflected in this because I understand you didn't get a response back from the pastor, priest. But you know, I know that there is housing in there because I've walked it, and it's been a long time, so I don't know how consolidated the rooms are, but there used to be a number of people living there. And so I wonder if we could explore that, just so that that's another thing we can raise if we get that information. And then also I think it'd be good, I don't know what other council members think, but to have the same flexibility. They've already got housing on that site, and if we're going to consider the parking lot there for the housing, can we be flexible between the 2 sites, i.e. the church rectory and or the parking lot?
It will come down to, I think, property owner interest there. So if we can get a hold of people at the church and have a discussion with them about what their plans might be, what they might be open to. The reason the parking lot site is on the inventory right now is because the zoning does allow for housing. It is also within a flood zone and I believe a liquefaction zone. So without property owner interest, it can't be counted towards lower income RHNA, which is why it's shown as moderate. But what the current inventory is reflecting is that it is available for housing now, and it would fit the bill for moderate, which is where our gap is. But to your point, we could absolutely continue to try and reach out to the church and find out what their plans are, and perhaps develop something that's different or more robust if they're open to it.
Anybody else have any comments? Why don't I go around each council member so we get comments? Julie, would you please kick it off?
I guess I'm still of the view, I mean, I agree with what Elizabeth said. I don't think we should have the units at the south end of the parking lot, south of the post office. I'm not sure we need to have the units above the post office either. I think I would be more comfortable just not having any of those, and we would still meet the buffer. But I think what you're telling us is that we need to be prudent and exercise good faith. And so in light of that recommendation, I think I would put 6 at the Civic Center, and we're still well above the 10% on the very low / very low, if we just eliminate the 6 at the post office. And then explore, as Elizabeth said, St. Anselm's. Despite my negotiation instinct, I will defer to your expertise.
I think it is important to move expeditiously on this. Time is not on our side. And the sooner we can get something that is in acceptable condition to the state, the better, because that just starts a long period of comment and so forth. I'm persuaded by the argument, don't hold anything back, put your best foot forward, just to expedite that period. The consequences of not meeting deadlines can be catastrophic. I mean, what we're talking about is somebody else taking over our zoning, finding a big lot and saying, let's build 60 units and a 10-story high building here. How would that look in Ross? I mean, I'm exaggerating probably, but we never want to get to that point. We want as much control of our process as we can have, while still respecting state law and complying with state law. So I think we should include the post office area, whether it's 3 above the post office or 6. And we're in good faith. We're saying we think this is a possibility. That doesn't mean it will be built. You need a partner, you need design, to do the design and so forth. And it could be that there is not a way to do this, but it seems possible that it could. So I think we're justified in putting it in the plan. So I would lean in that direction. And of course, the 6 at the Civic Center, subject to our planning for that. I would keep that buffer larger.
Okay, Councilmember Robbins, could you please provide your comments?
Well, I did. I mean, my initial comment was, I think we should move ahead, but I absolutely don't think we should include the 6 sites at the post office, because I think that if that moves forward at all, that really catastrophically changes the downtown and heart of Ross. And we can meet these needs, the housing needs, without changing, the very essence of our town. So I would not be in favor of having the 6 sites at the post office as part of the plan. And I would submit it either adding some on top of the post office, or just as it is with the 6 at the Civic Center, or I'm not unopposed to putting more at the Civic Center if we wanted to move the 6 post office to the Civic Center. But I think the thing I feel the strongest about is that it doesn't help. Putting 6 sites at the southern end of the post office is not a viable site for the town. And there are other viable sites for housing.
So my view is I would keep the 6 and put them at the post office, because if we take off some, including 6 at the Civic Center, then we still have the 6 at the post office. I think it just gives us the maximum flexibility as we go forward. I actually think above the post office is not going to ruin our downtown. I don't believe that. And I think it's a nicer site, and I can't imagine 12 units on this property. I think that's crazy, and be really tricky, because we're going to have that kind of that lot opens up to the signal. So then we have to have a long driveway for the people, and that can't interfere with the driveway for police. So I'm just really feeling like that's not a very good idea. I don't know if, and I actually would like to see staff do this if it's possible. I would like to have more reach out to Cedars to see if they want more units. I would like to have more reach out to Marin Art and Garden Center to see if they could have more units. And I'd like to find out why St. John's hasn't, it sounds like staff has talked to them, but they haven't. I mean, I think we should have a really robust conversation with them about workforce housing, because the two churches and Cedars and Marin Art Garden Center are great sites, and I'm kind of sad they aren't taking more of the, burden here, which I think could be a benefit to them. So I'd like to, before we get our comments back, I'd like to explore that. And I actually believe that we're going to build so many ADUs because everybody is doing an ADU. I think that that's going to be so wildly popular that then it'll take the pressure off us to do other housing if that's a later council decides that that's harder to do or not feasible or what have you. So I would adopt the housing plan as is with the modifications I just discussed, because I think we need to get this thing in, or the residents that are not in favor are going to be really unhappy with us when zoning is taken out of our control. And we can't issue a pool permit for, until we get this thing wrapped up. So that's my thought.
But if the post office site is on the plan, we don't have at that point the right to say, we don't want to do it after all. Isn't that correct?
No, we were told that we do have the right to take it off. And so we can rebuild the post office as is, and then not build that housing as long as we have sufficient, a buffer that keeps us, within the range. If we don't have the buffer and we take 6 sites off or 12 sites off, then we have to go back out, redo our housing element, which incidentally has cost us what, $500,000 plus? That can't be the number, really. I mean, it's got to be more than that. All right. But still, I mean, it's not going to make for easier decisions later. So I think we want to try and be one and done on this housing element.
I just think that to make a decision that can change the center, basically the center of town in ways that we won't get it back is not the right thing to do. And, I mean, it may be hard to have 12 units at the Civic Center, but for planning purposes, I don't see anything wrong with suggesting that that's where they go. And that certainly affects the entire center of town and everyone's experience of the town, much less than having, I mean, I don't know how tall it would have to have 6 units at the post office, at the southern part of the lot, because I mean, already we're short 12 parking places. That's a 1 or 2 story parking structure with a building built on top of it. And then, it's aesthetically and parking and traffic wise, I think that's not worth risking. I think that
I'm
it's
hearing
likely.
enough, but Councilmember Robbins, I'm hearing enough council members interested in relocating. Am I correct in that? Relocating any of the housing at the post office to the post office,
Yeah,
and
Elizabeth, it would
eliminating
be-
the housing over the parking lot.
It would be above a floor above the existing post office instead of.
I'm fine if it's above the existing post office, but I'm not in favor, and I may be outvoted, but I'm not in favor of keeping this site of 6 units at the southern end of the post office.
I think everybody's agreed with that. So perhaps with that, we should see if there's a motion. Does anybody want to?
We don't need a motion tonight. We're giving direction
Direction
to submit the housing element.
So directed.
And I just want to make sure, does staff know the direction to take?
Yes. So definitely not over the southern portion of the post office parking lot, but over the post office itself. So revising the direction and the map.
And the other direction that we gave, is that adequate? Meaning the St. Anselm's
Oh,
parking
yes,
lot
to
and the
yes.
rectory?
Yeah, pursue other options while the review is in process.
Well, in the housing element, we have the post office cited for housing. Can we put the post office, the parking lot on Bolinas and/or the rectory?
Oh, I see.
Parking lot or rectory
Oh, I see. Yes, I think we can, so show,
in the
Yes.
housing element. Is that possible?
yes, we can do that.
Okay.
Would we need to have a rezoning component to that?
No, the whole of the site is currently zoned to allow for housing.
Okay.
So we would just be essentially expanding the color over the church itself. And essentially we're expanding the possibility, so the property owner could do it wherever within
Yeah.
the whole of the
Or
property.
their parking lot.
Right.
There,
Right.
either or. Okay.
Is that okay? I mean, that's not going to hold up submission of the plan because we're
Nope.
not sure what
Nope.
the owner's going to say.
Nope.
Okay.
It doesn't change the numbers in the table. The numbers in the table still stay the same. It's the way the APN and the way the map is shown. We're expanding it.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item number 17.
I just have one thing. I think that it was noted that there were some basically typographical errors or things that were incomplete. There's something that I saw, but I'm sorry, I can't give you a page number. But it was something referring to something being done that I think has already been done. So maybe update that. And I might have misunderstood, but within 30 days we'll do X. I think we had already done that. It's just basic background stuff that should be easy to fix if I'm even correct.
Yes, and the word deed, D-E-E-D, was D-E-E, and rent was REN. So I forgot to note that as
Yeah,
well.
yes, we had an issue with a technical issue with the fonts when it converted to PDF. Because of the font we used, some of the letters were left off. So I've had someone do a thorough proofread and we'll fix all that. So apologies for that.
Thank you. And actually, I want to comment on how great I thought the reports were. So thank you. Excellent. It's been really nice to work with you, Andrew. I think you've done a nice job. And Rebecca, yes, both of you. Thank you very much. We can move on to item 17, environmental impact report scoping meeting to solicit input from the public and agencies on topics that should be addressed in the environmental impact report for the housing and safety element. This is a no town council action item. So is there staff report on that?
Yes, and I will make the presentation. So because implementing the housing element could result in significant impacts, it's been decided that an environmental impact report is required. And so under state law, the town must conduct a public scoping meeting to hear about the scope and content of environmental issues to be included in the EIR. And tonight we'd like to have comments focus on potential environmental issues and solutions to address them rather than on the merits of the housing element itself. The EIR will be a programmatic EIR. Oh, sorry. Oh, you hit stop share.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, share. Nope. No, not that one. Yes, that one. Apologies for that. So the EIR will be a programmatic EIR, which means that it's going to look at implementation of the housing element itself rather than implementation of any specific project. And the purpose of the EIR is to inform decision makers and members of the public about the potential environmental impacts of the plan so that there's a full spectrum of knowledge available when the council comes time for the council to make a decision on adopting. The EIR will include a description of the proposed plan. It'll also identify the existing environmental setting, and it'll describe any potential environmental impacts, and it will include mitigation measures that can reduce or avoid those impacts. This is a snapshot of the overall process for the EIR. Under state law, there's very specific defined points for public input. We're currently in the first of those. It's called the scoping period. On November 28th, the town released a notice of preparation of an EIR, which is a document that lets public agencies and any interested members of the public know that an EIR will be prepared, and it invites comment on the scope of environmental issues and solutions to address them that should be incorporated in the EIR. The scoping period runs until the end of December, and within the scoping period tonight, we're holding a public meeting to hear comments on environmental issues. Following the close of the scoping period, we'll take on board any comments received, and we'll make sure to address them in the draft EIR. The draft EIR will be, when it's ready, released for a period of 45 days, during which people can review and comment on it. Following that 45 days, we'll respond to any comments on environmental issues and produce the final EIR, and that final EIR will come before the council at the same time as the housing and the safety element. So you have all three documents in front of you as you make your decision. The EIR will address all of the required environmental resource categories that are required under the California Environmental Quality Act. They're listed up here, and they include everything from aesthetics and visual resources to air quality, biology, historic resources, hazardous materials, noise, and wildfire. With the notice of preparation that was released on November 28th, we also prepared an initial study that did an initial assessment of environmental impacts. And that study found that these categories, biological resources, tribal, cultural, and historic resources, GHG emissions, geology, hydrology, noise, transportation, and wildfire are likely to have potentially significant impacts. And so those categories will be studied in detail in the focused EIR. All of the resource areas will be discussed, but the focus will be on particularly on those ones because those are the most likely to result in environmental impacts, and the EIR will recommend mitigation measures that can reduce or avoid them. And so with that, in a moment, we'll turn it over for any comments on the scope and the content of the EIR. And in particular, tonight, we'd like to hear if any members of the public or public agencies have any information that they think would be beneficial for us to use as the EIR is being prepared. If there are any particular concerns about any CEQA topics, any of those resource categories. For example, if somebody knows about localized flooding, they think that would be an issue that we should be aware of, that would be something we'd like to hear. And then if anyone has any potential solutions that could address any environmental impacts, that would also be a really useful comment to hear as part of the scoping meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to public comment.
Okay, would it be appropriate for council to ask staff questions before we open it to the public? Okay, does any member of the council have a question? Okay, seeing no questions, let's open it to the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to be heard on this?
Apologies, there are no hands raised.
Thank you
On
very
Zoom.
much. Okay, we will close public comment and bring it back to the council. Why don't we go around with any comments you have? Elizabeth, would you like to start?
Well, I kind of thought aesthetics would be something we'd want to talk about on the, the CEQA, but I'm fine with the presentation. I don't really have anything to add.
And
I don't have anything to add either. Thank you.
I don't have anything to add that is specific to the housing element. I think this whole RHNA program has a big impact on public safety and things like that, but I'm arguing against legislation that's already been passed. I would not put 111 units in an area like this that's subject to wildfire, flooding, et cetera, but they've made that decision for us.
thank you. And I have no further comments. So with that, this is just a no action item. So we're done there. I will move it to item number 22, council correspondence. Did any member of the council have any correspondence? Next, 22B, future council items. The items. Okay, with that, we're adjourned.